Hi, my name is Trudy Grable, and we're going to be talking about applying for SSI today. SSI is also called Supplemental Security Income. I have a daughter who uses services and applied for SSI for her successfully due to my learning from Parents Helping Parents. So I hope that this program is helpful in your journey and makes it a little easier for you in this application process. I know how scary it can feel when you're applying for government benefits, but it'll be okay, and we're here to support you. If you still feel overwhelmed at this process, we can connect you with someone to talk to. So let's get started. I'm going to talk about the 3 S's. There's SSA, which is the place that you go to apply. SSA.gov is their website. SSI is a cash assistance program for people who are disabled and have limited resources, or are 65 and older with limited resources. SSDI, which is for people who have contributed to the system through tax dollars to fund if you become disabled after working for a certain period of time. You can then obtain benefits under SSDI. But we're going to focus on SSI today. There are many Social Security administrative offices, and you can find those all online. We're going to talk about eligibility first. We're going to talk about the application process. We're going to talk about the importance of your medical records and how they play a role in this determination process. And we're going to talk about the impairment information that is crucial for you to know so that you apply in a way that a determiner can decide whether or not the person is disabled. First, you must meet the disability criteria, and that links back to that listing of impairments. You must also have limited income and resources. And limited resources means that you can't have, a couple of bobblehead collections that are worth 10 grand each and still get SSI. They're going to expect you to sell that bobblehead collection so that you can then be under the means of assets, and we'll talk more about that. 6.5 out of 10 applications are denied, which is why we began doing this training, because we learned that if people are aware of what they need to do in advance, the likelihood is so much higher that they're going to be awarded SSI the first time. And to make that even worse is if you ask for reconsideration, it's an 85% denial. So it's critical that people spend the time preparing in advance for their application. SSI is available to children and youth. If your child is turning 18 in a given month, they may apply anytime during that month. So if their birthday is on the 18th, they can apply on the 1st. If the child's birth date is on the 1st, you can usually apply the month before. There's people between 18 and 65 who have disabilities and limited income and resources, and that amount is only $2,000, so we're talking really limited, especially in today's economy. People who are older than 65 who have both the limited income and resources do not need to have a disability, but they can still be eligible for SSI. People must meet certain citizenship requirements or be a qualified alien or generally a U.S. citizen. Again, they have to meet the income and resource limits, and they must have a disability that prevents them from working. So SSI is means tested, much like Medi-Cal. So if you want Medi-Cal, you have to have limited income or limited means, and means means assets. SSI is the same. It falls under the means tested program. So they're going to ask about your bank accounts. They're going to ask about assets that you have that might be liquidated, like a whole life insurance policy or other assets that might be beneficial in sustaining food and shelter for you. So the asset amount is $2,000, remember. So if you have $2,001 in the bank, you've just lost your SSI. And oftentimes people think, well, they won't notice, but sometimes they come up later and say, you know, we checked and you had more resources. So you really want to pay attention to that, because if you're able to save the money in the bank, they're going to suspect that you don't need SSI because you must be getting help from somewhere else. $3,000 is the maximum of assets for a couple. And then you must have a very limited income, sometimes called SGA, substantial gainful activity. We'll talk more about that too. So what they count as a resource is anything that you convert to cash. So, you know, if you have rings and things that you can sell, they're going to ask you to do that. What doesn't count, more importantly, is the home that your child or you live in if you're the person applying. So you can live in a home and you can own it outright or have very low mortgage payments because you bought 25 years ago, and you can have a home. You can also have a vehicle. So any registered or unregistered vehicle that is used for transportation is allowable, and they no longer add a dollar value to that. So here's the SGA that I talked about a minute ago, substantial gainful activity. So if the person brings in a certain amount per month from work that exceeds what the substantial gainful activity is, they will not be eligible. This is the dollar amounts that people get for SSI when they're eligible. The maximum monthly benefit for an individual is now $910.72, and if they're a couple, it's $1,532.14. If someone is helping the individual who's applying with expenses to food and shelter, their federal benefit could be reduced by a maximum of $246.48. When I say the federal amount, it's because the federal government contributes the larger portion of SSI and the state supplements it. So they will not deduct it from the total of $910. They will deduct it from the federal amount. Now, the state amounts are different in every state, so I'm not going to give you the actual numbers in case you're watching this from outside of California, but when it breaks down, you can figure that out. So if you have a child who's a minor and applying for SSI, the maximum amount for 2018, and remember, all of these amounts are for 2018. They change every year and go up incrementally. Very small increments, but nonetheless, they go up. $8.15 is for a disabled minor child. That's the maximum amount. And generally, that's going to be paid toward group home living. If a child is living with you or in foster care or something of that nature, $5.6867 is the amount that they will get. So it's not a lot of money, but it certainly helps. So if you are working, but you make less than $1,170 per month and $1,950 if you're blind. So you might wonder why people who are blind get more money. It's largely because they actually have a better lobby, and they have lobbied the legislature for more money. So let me show you the money. The disabled minor child will get $815.15 per month, but largely that is if they are in a group home setting. So that amount goes up. But when they're in their family home or in the household of another, they will get $568.67. Social Security, remember that SGA, I'm going to talk about that now, is someone with a disability can be working, but only if they make less than $1,170 per month. But $1,950 if they're blind is the maximum amount. So, pardon me. Full-time students, however, can make $1,820 per month and a maximum of $73.50 per year. So those are full-time students. There's an exemption for them because, of course, every opportunity to work helps lead them to more independence and less reliance on government benefits. So let's say you're working. Can your child get SSI? That's a question I can't really answer and determine for you in a online learning. That's something that you'll have to talk with the social worker at SSA about, because it depends on how many people live in your house. It depends on your income, your expenses. And so I'm just going to let you know that yes, you can work, but it might be different amounts for you based on the number of people in your house, and so I wouldn't want to mislead you. So that's information that you can check out. There's also a link to the spotlights about deeming, and that is going to give you more information about parents working and getting SSI. So let's talk about what you do first. The first thing that you can start doing is getting your medical records in order. This is where people get denied the first round, because oftentimes the physician is unaware of the things that go on at home, of the impact of the disability. They're really going into the office and they're doing a well check and they're saying, yes, you know, this was a great exam, you're healthy, let's give you your immunizations and go on and we'll see you next year. So there's very little information about a person's disability, especially as they get older, unless they have medical complications. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the physician is noting how your person interacts with them. How much are they able to participate in the examination? Is it all parents reporting? We want documentation of the impact of the disability in the medical records, because Social Security is looking at a medical determination. So how you can supplement that is to provide copies of the IEP assessments, and not for the last 20 years, but the last year. So what was the last assessment determining for this person's placement, their level of functioning, their language, and all of those abilities. So get a copy of that into the medical records. And make sure that when you drop it off, you tell them we'd like this in the medical record. And you might even tell them why. Then have your doctor record all of that information that we talked about previously, because it's going to help the person who's making the decision, who's never met your son or daughter, look at a medical record and say, is this history and information consistent with what they put on the application? Okay, and then learn about the eligibility criteria so that you can, and share that with the physician so they know what the medical records need to reflect, so that you're more likely to get the award the first time. So next steps. You can fill out the disability report online, and this is not an application for SSI. For SSI, you must go into the office. But what you can do is you can get started by filling out the application. You're going to want to have already looked at the listing of impairments. So we'll be looking at that in a few minutes. You also want to have examples that help illustrate why your person fits that criteria. If you need help with applications, you can call any of the Social Security offices as well. So the medical definition of a disability. So we talked about boosting your medical records to reflect the disability and the impact of the disability, more importantly. So The medical records are critical, as I've mentioned a couple of times. I don't think I can say that enough because I think it's underestimated, but I really want you to focus on that first. They are going to send your doctor a request for information. You might carry a ton of documents with you, but they're probably going to say, we don't want those. We want to get it electronically. Because typically they're going to ship that off to another state for evaluation. And then the disability must be expected to last at least 1 year or result in death, which means a lifetime disability. So they use special rules for blindness, and there is a link that you can go to find out more information about that. Because of course, remember, people who are blind get a little bit more money. So the Blue Book is the piece that you're going to use for disability determination. There are adult listings and there are childhood listings. And I'd like to show you very quickly how to see what your child might fit in. So let me just click on one of these. And I'm going to start with adult. And this goes right into the Social Security website. And for a lot of our folks who have autism or developmental disabilities, it's listed under mental disorders. So you'll click there and you'll see on the left here all of the diagnoses and conditions in which your child might fit. Let's just click on autism spectrum disorder. It's giving you right here what must be met. So there's ands and ors in some of these, so pay attention to those because you have to meet all the criteria. So under 12.10 autism, and then you'll see some other references where you can look to make sure you've got all the information that's necessary. You're going to have to meet A, 1 and 2, and you'll have to have an extreme limitation of 1 or a marked, which means significant limitation of 2 of the following areas. And so you can look at these. One is understand and remember or apply information, interact with others, concentrate, persist, or maintain pace, and adapt or manage oneself. So again, remember, extreme limitation of 1 or a marked limitation of 2. So you would select B, 1, and 3 if that was your person who you're applying for. So for each condition that your child has, because maybe they have autism and an anxiety disorder, or autism and a mental health disorder, or an intellectual disability and autism. And so you'll want to look at all of the conditions under which your child might fit, which helps to build your case. You're building evidence of need. So there's childhood listings that work much the same. And so you'll want to print those out and highlight those that apply to your child, and then write some brief examples of how that applies to your child. And when you're doing the online application, there's actually more room for you to write that information than when you're doing a paper application. There's something else called compassionate allowance, and this is for people who have serious health issues that they might be automatically awarded. Don't even really have to go through a whole lot of process. There's also quick disability, which when the disability is obvious, that it's going to allow them to be quickly determined, and it will take probably far less than the normal, which is about 6 months. In order to determine the disability, here's what they do. They look at the evidence from the person's medical records. They may also arrange for a consultative exam with one of their physicians in the event that they're unable to conclude whether or not the disability is enough that's going to make them eligible. And it's okay if they do that. That happens frequently to families. Most people panic, but it's not an unusual thing to have them do. This is what we actually get PHP gets these, but please don't list us as providing medical services, because we don't. So we just have to return this. But we did get this, and I thought it was good for you to see that they're actually looking for something called evidence, and they want to know about the ability to work. So remember, visits that you have with your physician should not just focus on the person's well-being at the time, but the impact of their disability. So living arrangements, there's differences in living arrangements where the amount may be changed. And remember, we talked about that 1/3 reduction. When your child is able to pay for their own food and shelter costs, the maximum benefit stays in place and there's no reduction. But let's say your child lives in an apartment and you help them with the rent because there's no way they could afford to live there without it. They're going to get the reduction. And that's going to be 1/3 of the federal amount plus $20. So they're going to give them a free $20. So yay. If your child's living in your house and they can't pay their fair share, so let me talk about fair share a little bit. So fair share means if there's 3 people living in a household and the total expense for the house, the food and shelter, is going to be $3,000 every month, and you divide that by 3, everybody's share would be $1,000. Can Johnny pay his $1,000 on SSI? No, because he's only getting $910.72. So he's going to get the federal reduction of 1/3. Now, if there were 4 people living in the house and you divide $3,000 by 4, that's $750 each. Johnny can pay his fair share and he would get the full amount. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is what the legislator put in place a long time ago, and it's what we're stuck with. These numbers were all developed in the 70s. So there's something now called an ABLE account, which helps people achieve a better life experience. That's what ABLE stands for. And they're available in some states. They're not available in California yet, but maybe by the time you're watching this, they will be. You can add $15,000 a year, and it is used for disability-related expenses. The maximum ever that can be in that account at this point is $100,000, and these are not going to count against SSI. So this is one way to have some extra money to help with paying rent, to help with paying for health care or equipment and things that the individual might need. You can learn more about ABLE accounts by Googling ABLE, Achieving a Better Life Experience, and find out what states have these in place and learn more about them. But we're going to go back to SSI now. So can someone over 22 work? Yes. They will always have more money. So how it works is, so the reason that it's over 22 is, remember, full-time students can earn money without it affecting their SSI. So there's a calculator on db101.org that would actually tell you exactly how much a person would make and how that would affect their benefits. So let me just share with you a little bit. They get the extra $20 already, even if somebody's helping them. It's 50 cents on the dollar for each dollar earned. So they will deduct, for if you make $100, they're going to deduct 50, but you're still going to end up with more money. So let's look at the calculation. So let's go back to an earlier slide that we talked about a person being unable to work with SGA, but that if you're earning more than $1180 and you're working with a disability, that you may still be eligible for SSI. And so I want people to know that you can work, but you just can't earn enough money that it kicks you off SSI. Now, if somebody can work full-time with their disability and have accommodations, financially they're much better off. They'll probably get better health insurance and such. So SSI shouldn't be the reason for somebody to quit working. And if the concern is losing Medi-Cal, which of course opens the door to other supports at home, there is a working disabled program for Medi-Cal. So I encourage you to look at that. So again, just to recap, students under 22 can earn $18.20 a month or annually up to $73.50, which is a nice, sweet little amount of money. Qualified disability expenses, they will be deducted from counting against the loss of SSI dollars. So let's say you've earned $200. They're deducting 50 cents on the dollar, so that would be $100. But let's say you need some support at work and you're paying for that support person out of your pocket. You have to pay for transportation, or any other disability-related expense would be deducted from that. So let's say you have $50 worth of expense, add that $50 back to your income. And there's an example on the slide of other disability-related expenses that may be considered. So let's talk about the other financial benefits of SSI. Medi-Cal comes automatically with SSI in California. Other states may require a separate application process, but the benefit of Medi-Cal for Californians is that it'll cover your copays with private insurance if your healthcare provider accepts it. Usually for prescriptions, it's never a problem. And if your private insurance doesn't pay for something, Medi-Cal may. In-home support services becomes available to those who didn't have it before because they now have Medi-Cal. And in-home support services is a benefit to help people stay in their own homes. So the state will help pay for people to come in and provide the kind of supports the individual needs. And we do have a whole nother webinar and classes that we teach on in-home support services. There's also a program called HIP, Health Insurance Premium Payment, that is little known by people. If somebody has serious medical issues, sometimes it's less expensive for Medi-Cal to pay the premium for a private insurance than to fund all of the medical care. So if you're applying on behalf of somebody who has serious health issues and ongoing health needs, this might be a program worth looking at. There's something called a PASS plan, which is a plan to achieve self-support that can be approved by Social Security. It might be you're setting money aside to work toward a micro enterprise, and you can work with someone called the WIPA. She's the Work Incentive Planning person, and she's located across the state, and we can help you find that person if you need that. I'm going to briefly touch on SSDI, Social Security Disability Income, because if your person has worked in the past, then they may have enough units to apply and receive SSDI. Sometimes people get a letter saying your person does not qualify for SSDI, and people panic and say, oh, but we just got denied. But that's just for SSDI, because they're always going to evaluate for SSDI first, because that is an insurance program. So you've been paying into this insurance program through your employer all the times that you're working. It doesn't mean that they won't be eligible for SSI. They may get both. So let's talk about SSDI now. That's the one where we've been making contributions to SSDI all of our working life. So we're essentially insured by the contributions that we've made. Why that's important is as we age or as we become disabled ourselves, we might retire or we might die. our adult child who was disabled before the age of 22 will then begin to receive benefits from our contributions as parents. And so they will generally get half of whatever the SSDI recipient gets. And if it's under that qualified amount, they might still get SSI. And even if you get only $1 of SSI, you're still eligible for Medi-Cal. One of the worries that people have is when they lose SSI, they lose Medi-Cal. We already talked about that. But there is something called the Pickle Amendment. And the Pickle Amendment protects people from losing their Medi-Cal if they ever received even $1 of SSI. So if you're faced with that, you can give us a call, or you can just Google Pickle Amendment and get the information about that. The other benefit to your son or daughter getting SSI is that after the 25th month, they will get a Medicare card. So once they're on there for 24 months, 25th month, Medicare kicks in for them as well. And then they have Medicare and Medi-Cal. So for SSDI, they still have to meet that same definition of disability that I showed you earlier under the Blue Book. The adult will qualify if they became disabled before 22, they meet the disability criteria. And again, if one parent is deceased, disabled, or retired. And then the 25th month, that Medi-Cal or Medicare will kick in. So SSDI recipients may also work. So there's a whole nother program to help get people on SSDI back to work, and there's information about it at this link. There's also a program called Ticket to Work for SSDI recipients that I encourage you to look at. So the real difference between SSI and SSDI is SSI is a cash payment to individuals who are disabled or 65 and older and have limited assets. SSDI is the insurance program that we've all been paying into in the event that we become disabled while we're still of working age. There's something called CAPI, which is a cash assistance program for immigrants. And so this is something that you can look into if you have somebody in your family or in your environment that might need this assistance. And it's completely state funded. There's some listings for other disability help under these links. I encourage you to take a look at those. Feel free to call us at Parents Helping Parents, 408-727-5775 if you have additional questions. We also do a live training of this information with interaction and a little bit of practice homework. So if that's of interest to you, you're also welcome to come to that. It's been great sharing this with you. I wish you luck on your application, and call us if you need us. I hope you found this information helpful. You can watch it as many times as you'd like, or you can participate in a live workshop with us here at Parents Helping Parents, where we'll actually do practice sessions and formulas on the screen and be able to answer your individual questions. We're not benefits experts, but we're pretty knowledgeable, and our goal through this workshop is to give you the information that is going to increase the likelihood of a positive award of SSI for the person for whom you're applying. Good luck.